Derrida's Margins of Philosophy was first published in 1972. It is a collection of essays addressing issues at the boundaries of philosophy, language, and metaphysics. He challenges the foundational assumptions of Western thought by interrogating its privileging of speech over writing, the quest for ultimate meaning, and the metaphysical dichotomies that structure philosophical inquiry. The work functions in the margins, engaging with key philosophical texts to destabilize their apparent certainties and reveal the complexity of language, meaning, and textuality. The preface establishes the framework for the essays, emphasizing the importance of engaging with the margins of philosophy, those areas traditionally seen as supplementary or peripheral. Derrida argues that these margins are not external to philosophy but integral to its structure, shaping its concepts and possibilities. By attending to these margins, Derrida reveals the tensions and contradictions within philosophical systems, opening up spaces for deconstructive critique. The first essay, Timpan, introduces the idea that philosophy has always been defined by what lies outside its borders, the non-philosophical. Derrida uses the metaphor of the tympanum, the membrane that separates and connects different spaces, to explore how philosophical concepts are defined in opposition to their others. He critiques the idea of fixed boundaries, arguing that philosophy is always in dialogue with what it excludes. This essay sets the tone for the collection, demonstrating how deconstruction functions at the limits of philosophical discourse. The second essay, Difference, is one of Derrida's most influential pieces, where he elaborates on the concept of difference, a neologism combining the French words of difference and deferral. Difference describes the process by which meaning is generated through the interplay of differences between signs. Derrida argues that meaning is never present in itself but always deferred, existing only in relation to other signs. This essay challenges the metaphysics of presence that underpins much of Western thought, showing how language functions as a system of traces rather than fixed reference. In his essay Ousia and Grame, Note on a Note from Being and Time, Derrida engages with Heidegger's being and time, particularly his treatment of temporality and presence. Derrida critiques Heidegger's privileging of temporality as a horizon of being, showing how writing or Grame complicates this framework. Writing is not merely a second form of expression, but a fundamental structure that disrupts the immediacy of presence. This essay deepens Derrida's critique of logocentrism, exposing the limit of Heidegger's philosophy. The essay The Pit and the Pyramid, Introduction to Hegel's Semiology, examines Hegel's philosophy of language and its relationship to consciousness and representation. Derrida analyzes Hegel's privileging of the dialectical movement toward absolute knowledge, revealing how this process depends on the suppression of the materiality of language. The essay highlights the tension between the ideal and the material in Hegel's system, showing how language resists being subsumed into the totalizing structure of dialectics. In the essay The End of the Book and the Beginning of Writing, Derrida critiques the traditional privileging of the book as a symbol of unity and closure in philosophical and literary traditions. He contrasts this with the concept of writing, which he describes as an open-ended proliferative process that resists totalization. Writing is not confined to the page but encompasses all forms of inscription and difference. This essay highlights Derrida's argument that writing is a disruptive force that undermines the metaphysical quest for absolute meaning. White mythology, metaphor in the text of philosophy, explores the role of metaphor in philosophical discourse. Derrida argues that philosophy, while claiming to function through pure concepts, is saturated with metaphors that shape its thinking. These metaphors often draw from other domains such as nature or art, yet their origins are effaced in the process of philosophical abstraction. Derrida reveals how these white mythologies, erased origins of metaphor, undermine the claim to philosophical purity, exposing the interplay between rhetoric and conceptual thought. The essay's signature event context extends Derrida's critique of the metaphysics of presence by examining the relationship between language, context, and meaning. Derrida introduces the concept of iterability, the ability of a sign to be repeated in different contexts, arguing that meaning is never fully defined by its original context or intention. This analysis disrupts traditional theories of communication, showing how meaning is always provisional, contingent, and subject to reinterpretation. In Limited Ink, ABC, Derrida engages with J.L. Austin's speech act, particularly the concepts of performative and constitutive utterances. Derrida critiques Austin's insistence on the purity of performatives, showing how they are always embedded in contexts that complicate their function. By emphasizing the iterability of speech acts, Derrida reveals the instability of their meaning, challenging the notion of unambiguous performative authority. La Parole Soufflée examines the relationship between language and subjectivity, focusing on the concept of inspired speech. Derrida critiques the romantic ideal of the inspired poet or speaker, showing how this is on a metaphysical conception of presence. Instead, he highlights the mediated and fractured nature of language, which resists being fully owned or controlled by the speaking subject. The final essay, Freud and the Scene of Writing, explores the intersection of psychoanalysis and deconstruction. Derrida engages with Freud's model of psyche, particularly the metaphor of the mystic writing pad as a representation of memory and inscription. Derrida argues that Freud's theory of the unconscious operates through a logic of writing where traces are inscribed, erased, and reinscribed. This analysis links Freud's work to Derrida's broader critique of presence, showing how the psyche is structured by processes of difference and dissemination.